Welcome back everybody to my channel, and this is going to be another one of my videos in my monthly news roundup series. Now this is going to be episode 6 in the series, and as always I want to say if anybody out there does have any content that they want to include, that you think I should be including in this, then please send me a message. Down below in the description you'll see a link. I believe it's news@seansaviation.com, or you can DM me on Facebook or post on my page on Facebook or through a comment here on YouTube. If you feel like there's something that I should be talking about or that you think should be mentioned, by all means send it to me, and I will curate all that news and I'll put in what I feel like. And for the most part, you know, as long as it's bigger international news, I tend to focus on Canada because I'm from Canada, but I'm also in the big international space. If there's something big that you think should be here, please don't hesitate to contact me. I can't see everything, so I do miss some things off and on if it happens. So let's jump right into this video. And as always, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. And as well, I want to say thank you for everybody out there who is watching this channel. If you haven't yet and you do enjoy what you're watching, down below you'll find the buttons there. Hit the like, the subscribe, and the notification bell. The like will allow the YouTube algorithm to push these videos out to more people who are interested in the same stuff that we are. And the notification and the bell and the subscribe and the notification, I should say, will allow you to know when I release new content on this channel, which I tend to do at least about once a week, give or take, depending on the month. So it's quite a bit of content coming out, so it's there's more than enough out there to interest anybody who has a passing interest in aviation. So thank you for everybody who has subscribed already. I've broken 1,000 subscribers recently, and I'm getting pretty close to hitting the ability to link some merch, and I do have a little bit of merch working. I've got some designs I've got done up already. I have a sticker I have available if you are interested. These are available through some online vendors. I haven't linked to them yet. As I said, I need a few more watch hours, and I hit the milestone where I can link merch. If you are interested in these stickers, they're nice. They're matte. It's just my logo. It's a circle. It's a circle shaped sticker of my logo. If you are interested in these, send me a message. I can sell them directly to you. It's much cheaper if you buy these directly from me versus through any of the online sites. And I have some more designs, some kind of merit badge style stickers for model building, and I'm going to be doing some for photography and stuff like that. So if you're interested, please go ahead and message me. We can get some stuff sorted out. Otherwise, let's jump right into this video. As always, I have some notes in the background here that I'll be referencing to make sure I don't lose track of my train of thought, because that can wander quite easily as I go off. So in the usual format, we'll start with some of the bigger aviation headlines. It's specific to Canada, and I've mentioned it in some previous videos as the announcements have come out, but it's officially happened. The first RCAF A330 has been delivered. It showed up in Ottawa on its delivery flight. I do have a video. I'll actually link to the video I posted about its arrival into Ottawa, and it's pretty cool to see it flying around. And I actually don't have any. Yes, I do have pictures of it, so I'll put a picture up as well. The link's up above. I'll put a picture up of it sitting in Ottawa. So it's out and flying. Its serial number is 330002. The aircraft is called the CC330 Husky. So that's the one that's currently flying. It's in the VIP scheme, and just within the past couple of days, we've seen pictures of 330003 roll out of the paint booth over in France. I'll put a picture of that up as well. It's in the tactical gray scheme. And both of those aircraft, 02 and 03, are both ex-Kuwait Airlines airframes and are currently flying in an all-passenger. They haven't touched the interior. They're just kind of stock passenger interior, but they're being used for personnel and cargo in the belly and stuff like that. We have 3 more used ones that are supposed to be showing up soon with the new builds. I believe it was 2025 or 2026. When we're supposed to start getting the new build MRTT tankers right from Airbus. I've been told that the VVIP serial 330001 is going to be converted. So I think it's one of the next 3 that are being purchased used. It's going to go in for a full refit on the interior, It's going to have some sort of a VIP forward cabin, some like, you know, a bedroom, a boardroom, some secure communications equipment's going to be installed, and it's going to take time, and it's going to be painted up in the same blue and white and red current scheme we see on the on O2. Now, I've heard differing stories. That's probably about a year or two away before we get a full VIP one. But I've heard differing stories about what the plan is. I've heard some people, we bought 9 aircraft, that's known. I've heard some accounts that we're getting 7 tankers and 2 will be used in the VVIP transport role, one specifically for the Prime Minister and another one available as needed. I've also heard stories that O2, which is currently being flown as the VVIP, will be converted to a tanker down the road and will only have 1 VVIP and 8 tankers versus 7 tankers and 2. So there's some varying stories I've heard in there. I'm not entirely sure what the final plan is. But either way, we're starting to see them come online, and that's really cool. Specifically because this brings me to point 2, we've seen some significant issues with the CC-150 Polaris fleet. We only had 5 aircraft, 2 are tankers, and then there's 2 tankers, 3 that are set up as tactical or strategic transports, and the one of them painted up in the VVIP scheme. And has a bit of a modified interior, but it's not spectacularly modified. So out of those 5, we've had some serious issues with O1 over the past little while. There were some engine issues, and then the aircraft went mechanical. We haven't heard exactly how it went mechanical while it was in India, but it went mechanical and delayed the Prime Minister's departure. They had to send another aircraft in to get the Prime Minister out of India to get to further engagements, and then that aircraft was stuck for a little while it got repaired, and it's out. So that's kind of been a whole thing, and it's had some serious issues. We've had the Governor General being stranded in the Middle East due to mechanical problems. That particular airframe as well with O1 had an issue a few years ago with it rolled away and hit a hangar and smashed the nose, and it had to be rebuilt because we had nothing else to take its place in the fleet. So these 330s are coming at a very good time because the 310 or the CC-150 fleet is really starting to show its age. Again, just recently in Guam, I believe it was, we had an issue with 15003. And that's the one that's painted up in the classic sort of heritage scheme. It had an issue where it rolled across a ramp and went tail first into, I believe it was a French Air Force A400. And put a big chunk out of the tail. I'll put a picture up of what it looks like. Our 310 rolled back into the French A400, and the A400 vertical stab sliced into the tail. And what I've been told is that airframe is being scrapped in place in Guam as it's beyond repair. And with the 330s coming online, the 310s would have been retired eventually anyway, so they're going to scrap that one on site. So that, you know, it's a sad end to that airframe. You know, it should be on a museum with that paint scheme, but it is what it is. So 330s can't come online fast enough, so they're going to be pushed into service pretty quick. Actually, as I'm recording this now, it's October 2nd, and the first 330 we got, which is 33002, because it's all confusing. It's actually over in Europe again. It's on some training flights. It did some training flights around Canada. Now it's over in Europe. The crew's getting some work, some training in with it over in Europe, and hopefully within the few weeks we'll have it operational, and that thing will get into service. So that's really, really cool. Moving off, we'll take a look at the US side of things for a little bit. We've seen some new pictures from the B-21 Raider, which is the replacement for the B-2. Sorry, my chair keeps collapsing. I gotta get a new chair down here. Yep. The piston collapses and I slowly drop out of frame. Anyway, some new pictures of the B-21 has come out, and that's the new strategic bomber replacing the B-2. Not a lot. They're still pretty secretive of the airframe, but there's been some more pictures of it sitting in the hangar released. As always, I'll put a picture up of what it looks like. So hopefully we're going to get some pictures of that. It should be flying very soon. Apparently they've been doing some rapid prototyping and a lot of computer modeling, and this thing should be airborne much quicker than we're used to. And I think you're going to start to see that with some of these new airframes, as a lot of this can be done on computer. The building of the prototype isn't as, what's what I'm thinking of, it isn't as prototypical as usual. Usually building a prototype, it's done by hand. You're finding all the problems, you're you know, working out how things are going to fit. But with 3D CAD, that's all being solved on computers. So when the aircraft is being built, it's literally being built. It's being machined, CNC'd, laser cut, 3D printed. There's none of this kind of building by hand and building the jigs. It's all being done ahead of time. So Prototypes are rolling off and flying much quicker than we're used to, because a lot of the work is being done in the background on computer. So the B-21 should be flying soon. Great, I'm very excited to see these things fly. It's going to be really cool when they start, getting out in the wild, so to speak, and we start to see some actual pictures of them. And as well, I mean, this is, I have it in the headline section. You could probably put it into incident section, but I also have quite a few incidents to talk about. But there's video, and I'll try to find a still image I can use of this. There was video that came out a few weeks ago now, and again, I don't have the dates, so I'll put the dates up on the screen if I haven't already. In Alaska, there was a TFR in place for, I want to say it was either the US president or the US vice president, but a TFR was in place, and Alaska's Alaska. There's a lot of flying, there's a lot of off-grid flying, there's a lot of bush flying, no radios. It's a kind of a wild west, so to speak, when it comes to aviation. And there was a couple of incidences of planes busting the TFR, but specifically one that got caught in video where it looks like a Cessna of some sort or some high-wing Piper, possibly. It's hard to tell from the video. The one guy's up on a hill filming, and this plane flies out of a valley, and an F-16 comes in and starts dropping flares and escorting this plane out. And you don't normally see these types of interceptions happening on video, so it was really cool to see, especially from a higher down, like an up, looking down on the situation from a hill. It's a view you don't normally get to see. So it was pretty cool to see that video. And if I can find the link, I'll put the link down below. But either way, I should have put a screenshot up already so you can see that. But that's those are pretty interesting. It kind of made the news for a little while, then it fizzled out, and like usual when it comes to some of this stuff. Finally, looking at Air Canada. Air Canada has announced a massive purchase of, I mean, I say massive in the sense of Air Canada massive, purchase of Boeing 787s. They've purchased 18 787 10s, so 1,000, 787-10s. And they purchased 18 of them. And again, Air Canada doesn't tend to buy things in big numbers. So 18 787s is pretty huge. And they already have 8-8s and 30-9s in place. We have 38 787s in service already, and they bought 18 more with the options to buy another 12. So we could be seeing up to 30 787-10s entering service over the next little while. Now, they've announced that these are going to be the 18-10s that were purchased will be replacing older aircraft in the fleet. And specifically, Air Canada flies 18 A330. So there's good rumors that the new 787-10s will replace those A330s in service for some of their long-haul aircraft, and just get them a bit more fuel efficiency and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. I don't think I've ever seen a 787-10, so it'd be really nice to have some of those flying around in Air Canada and whatnot around the Canadian airspace. So that's pretty cool. So that kind of wraps up the headlines sections. In terms of events, everything's pretty much over. Air shows are done for the year. It's going to be next June is when the next air show coming up that at least I have planned. We've got Trenton at the end of June. They've already announced Michigan, Thunder River, Michigan will be in the end of July. It's actually the weekend before Oshkosh, so they're still going to be able to pull some of that Oshkosh attendees into their show by doing that the weekend before. And then London and Gatineau will probably be in September. But there's a lot going on next year. Like I said, with the RCF 100s, we're probably going to see quite a bit of interesting performers announced over the course of the year. So I'm very excited to get that going. And obviously, stuff will be posted on my Facebook as soon as I see it. So if you haven't been over there, jump onto Facebook, like my page. I put news out on there almost immediately when it comes out. But as always, I'll also be including it in here and giving you guys the heads up when it comes. Other than that, all my content is done. I've got all the videos for both Airshow London and Aero Gatineau Ottawa either out or coming out. And I'll be going through and getting a lot more content from that together, doing some individual acts and whatnot, and putting them together and pushing this content out over the course of the winter. So again, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, by all means, if you haven't yet, like, subscribe, and you guys can follow all that content as I release it. Now we move into the incidents, and it's actually been an interesting month for incidents. We'll start with a quick update from that MiG-23 crash in Michigan. There's been a couple. Now, there hasn't been an official report released yet. There was a preliminary report released by the FAA. I think I might have talked about that in the last video. Since then, the main pilot, Dan Filer, has been pretty much silent on the situation, which you'd expect considering the FAA is doing a full investigation into the scenario. The gentleman who rode in the back seat had released a video about the incident. And there's a lot of questions about that because he goes into a lot of detail that shouldn't necessarily be public that soon after an incident before the FAA has completed its investigation. And his account is a little bit different from what the official account states. He talks about how he was in the backseat making some decisions and telling the pilot how to do things, and that shouldn't be the dynamic that happens. And also the fact that Dan has already basically said through the FAA that he did not initiate the ejection, that the backseater initiated the ejection. So there's a lot of questions coming up about kind of what the backseater was doing and how it all went down. And I'm not blaming him in any way, and I'm not trying to, Monday morning quarterback any of this. It's through the FAA has to do this investigation, and I don't want to start guessing and it's not my place. But the way the video was presented was very interesting, and it was a little conflicting from what had already been announced through the media as well as through the FAA preliminary report. You're kind of seeing a little different of a perspective on how things could have went down versus what should have happened. So anyways, it's going to be interesting when the final report comes out and we actually kind of see the timeline and exactly what happened and sort of Dan's side of the story as to what happened there. Because something doesn't feel right in my gut with all of that. So moving right along, Reno. There's almost always an incident in Reno, and this year was the final year of the Reno air races. They will be moving, they are planning to relocate the races to a different airport somewhere within the continental US for either next year or the year after, depending on how long it takes to set up. And there's been some rumors and talk about some stuff that's kind of front runner locations, but that's for another time and place. But anyways, it was the final year at Reno, and it was a highly anticipated weekend. There was a lot of people who went down to there because it was the last race at Reno. Especially some of the contenders were big. Dreadnought was doing very well. The Sea Fury Dreadnought was doing very well, and the P-51 Bardal was doing very well. The Bardal Special. They were front runners for the Unlimited race, and then in one of the heats, Dreadnought blew an engine. It sucked an intake valve and ate itself up, and it safely landed, but it was out of the race, and so Bardal was way out in front of everybody else in the Unlimited, and they were looking for a very interesting race. And then on the final day, on the Saturday, during the T6 final, so then after T6 there would have been Unlimited, Jets, there would have been the F1, then the Jets, then the Unlimited category. But in the T6 category, the race finished, and after the race finished, after the cool down lap, as they were coming into land, apparently there was a bit of a miscommunication and planes lost sight of each other, and the number 1 and number 2 placed T6s collided. I believe it was base turning final, and both aircraft were fatally involved in the crash. The pilots did not make it out of those two aircraft, so that was real sad. And after that, they decided to just stop the races. They didn't finish the race. There was no completion to it, so it was kind of a sad, abrupt end to the final Reno air races. But it's Reno. It's a different world there, and it's very different. It's not an air show. It's got a lot less restrictions. It's a very different place, and it's sad that it happened. And I mean, it is Reno. It happens almost every year that there's some sort of an incident, but a sad end to a long heritage with that race. Also, I believe it was the same weekend, if memory serves. I think it was the same weekend. In Italy, in Turin, Italy, the Frecce Tricolori, the Italian national display team, had an incident on takeoff. The aircraft were taking off for a flight, for a show, and one of the aircraft, again, this is what I've been told, I will update as we have more information, but from initial reports, one of the aircraft had a bird strike, ingested a bird, and lost power. And the pilot, at a very low altitude, and the pilot ejected, and the aircraft came down into a neighborhood and hit a car, and there was a family in the car, and two of the four. Anyways, it hit civilians, and there's a number of civilians who were fatally injured in that crash. So again, there's nothing the pilot could have done. It was low altitude. He had no power. Anyways, but that. they've been up flying since, so it's not like there's any type of mechanical issue with the airframe. But of course, it's bad in the media when that kind of stuff happens. Everyone jumps on air shows and dangers and all that kind of stuff. So, but I'm pretty sure that it was the same weekend of Aero Gatineau, and I'm pretty sure that was the same week. It was. I know for a fact it was. So it was the same weekend as the crash in Reno. So a bit of a bad weekend there. Moving over to Russia, there was an Airbus incident in Russia. Now, due to sanctions in Russia, Boeing and Airbus are not supporting their fleets. So a lot of these airlines that are flying Boeing and Airbus products, they are on their own. So there have been reports of certain airlines that have told their pilots to not use their brakes, to use reverse thrust as much as possible to slow the aircraft down because they are running out of parts for the brakes to maintain them. A lot of these weird things. So now there was this one Russian Airbus A320, and I can't remember the airline name off the top of my head. I should have wrote it in my notes, but I didn't. But I'll put the picture up of it here. It had, again, there's conflicting reports on exactly what happened. The stories that I've heard is the aircraft suffered an hydraulic failure, declared an emergency, and went to the nearest airport. The nearest airport said, yeah, we only have one runway. If you land here, the airport's closed. So go to this airport because they have multiple runways. So the airplane turned and headed to another airport, and on the way, ran out of fuel. So the aircraft ended up doing an emergency landing into a field. Now, everybody got off, but I mean, an A320 landing in a field was different. And of course it's Russia. I mean, it's not, it shouldn't be funny, but it is of what's coming out of Russia these days. So that was that. Now, again, reports I've heard is that they plan to fly the aircraft out of the field. They suspect it's going to take a few months to get the aircraft back airworthy and fly it out, but that is the plan. Now, this isn't completely unheard of. There was an instance, I want to say it was back in the early 90s, of a 737 running out of fuel in the US, and they landed the aircraft on a levee in down in Louisiana near New Orleans. And same thing. They went out, they fixed it, they put a very light load of fuel on, and they flew it off the levee and landed it at the closest airport. So it's not unheard of to do this, it's just not normal. So I'm very interested to see if they actually do get this aircraft out. I'd hate to see them go through all of this and have an issue and have the plane have an accident on takeoff, but anyways, it's Russia. So my seat keeps doing this. I really need to get a new chair. Anyways, so yeah, there was that. Now, very kind of similar story, same feel to the story. In the US, there was I believe it was around North Carolina, an F-35B, a US Marine F-35B flying around. The pilot had an emergency. He elected to eject out of the aircraft. The aircraft continued to fly after the pilot ejected, and that's not uncommon. There have been issues like that in the past. There was a MiG-23 in Europe. I believe it was a Czech Republic or Polish. I believe it was Czech Republic, or maybe it was Ukrainian. Anyways, pilot ejected, plane continued to fly and crash in a field in the Netherlands. There was a case in the US of a pilot ejecting out of, it was either an F-102 or an F-106. And again, the plane continued. Actually, it's the one that's in the aviation, the U.S. Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. Pilot ejected, the plane continued to fly and landed in a field. Came in gently into a field when the fuel ran out. So it's not unheard of for an aircraft to eject, for the pilot to eject and the plane to continue flying. That's not unheard of. What is unheard of is because it was an F-35, ATC couldn't find it. The radars couldn't track it. It was specifically designed to not be picked up by radar. And it wasn't, and they had no idea where the plane went. They found wreckage from what I've heard. They found the wreckage, they found the aircraft, but it was about a week, and they were literally asking locals, "Hey, if you've seen an F-35, if you've seen an F-35, say something." Or because they had no idea where this plane had went down. And that's funny. I'm sorry, but that is funny. The U.S. Marines lost an F-35 after its pilot ejected, and that's a story you do not hear very, very rarely, or very often, I should say. It's an amazing story. Now, none of the F-35s were grounded, so it doesn't sound like it was a mechanical problem, like a systematic issue. It just sounds like something happened, whether it was a mistake or an accident or whatever, what have you. And it's also funny, you could hear the 911 call where the pilot who ejected called 911 and said, "Hey, I ejected, and you have to find the plane. Come get me and find the plane." And it's funny. It's comical that it's not something I ever would have expected to hear. But they did find it. My notes say still not found, which shows you how long it's been updated my notes. But they did find wreckage of the aircraft. They have announced that the aircraft was found and they recovered it. But yeah, they lost an F-35. Finally, I'm going to quick update on one of the stories from last month's news update. I talked about the Alaska 737 that landed in California and punched the main landing gear through the wing. Now, all the reports were it landed at a smaller airport during the tropical storm / Category 1 hurricane that hit California about a month or so ago. And all accounts were, oh yeah, it was a hard landing, blah, 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 blah. Pilot should not have done it. It was a huge mistake, what have you. Well, the FAA has released the preliminary report on that. And the preliminary reports are just basic information. It's not an investigation. It's just, here are the facts as we know them of now, just to update everybody with the latest until they complete the investigation. And the preliminary report stated that all data has showed that the aircraft did not suffer a hard landing. All parameters of that landing were within the safe zone. And the landing gear still came through the top of the wing. So the NTSB is actually looking at the potential of a mechanical failure or a parts failure of the gear. The article I was reading had stated that it was the trunnion bolt, the bolt that actually, the hinge point, the axle that the landing gear rotates on, all of that failed. And it just snapped and it just caused the landing gear to punch through because it was effectively detached from the wing. Now that's the preliminary report. I'm very interested to see the details on that because that could be another huge systematic issue with Boeing and the 737s. I mean, the MAX, all aircraft have issues. It's like a recall. There's always things with an aircraft that pop up and they find an issue and they correct it and they move on. They all have it. The initial incident with the MAX with the trim and I can't think of the name, MCAS, with the MCAS and all that other stuff, that initial incident and situation really tainted the MAX. So anytime there's anything about a 737, everybody's just rolling their eyes saying, here we go again. But every aircraft, every manufacturer and every aircraft type have these issues. But just recently we've had issues with the cowling cover on a 737. We've had the fan blade separation. You've had the MCAS situation. You've had the issue with Spirit Aerosystems drilling the pressure bulkheads wrong. And now we're hearing that there's potentially a parts issue with the landing gear. Now, I don't believe it was a MAX involved in the crash in California. I believe it was an NG, a 700 or an 800. But I mean, it's just 737s are on the mind of people because of MCAS and the MAX situation. So every time there's a problem with the 737, it's just another punch to the face for Boeing, and I feel for them. But yeah, so we'll see how that pans out. It's probably going to be a couple of months, if not a year, before a final report. As always, I'll update everybody here when that comes out. But just utterly ridiculous at this point. So I don't even know how long I've been talking for at this point, but that's all my notes I have. So I'm going to wrap it up here. As always, keep an eye out. I've got lots of content coming out in the next little while between models and the Airshow stuff that's still coming out. And I've got my usual RCAF history video coming out in the middle of the month. So quite a bit of stuff to come out. So keep an eye out on all of that. And again, I'll reiterate, if there's anything you want me to talk about, please, please, please message me, send me an email, whatever you need to do, because I will gladly take any recommendations for news. And if I do end up using something that you have related, I will credit you in the video. I'm not going to steal your idea. You will be properly credited if you do end up saying, bringing up something that is included, or if there's something I missed, if there's an incident that I'm talking about and there's more information that I missed, please bring it to my attention. I'll gladly like to update everybody as much as I can. So on that note, thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you all next time.